Welcome back. We're on the record this morning with David Shapiro and Danielle Ferrier.
You know, we often speak about migrants as a group, but these are individual people with their own stories, families. What are some of the stories that you folks are hearing? Who are these people?
Yeah, I think, you know, when we set up at the Wang YMCA in Chinatown, because we were 2 blocks down the street from the Department of Transportation, which was the first overnight shelter, basically people sleeping in conference rooms.
Right, they had to go somewhere, so
it was the first makeshift, kind of one of the first makeshift situations. So at 7 o'clock, when the people who worked there came in and they were basically out for the day, they came to the Wang and they spent the day at the Wang. And what really, I think, came into sharp relief as you talk to people was just that they had everything that they owned in a suitcase. That they didn't have strollers for their kids. They needed towels to shower, like just the basic needs of not thinking about where you're going, but knowing you needed to risk everything to go to another life. I think that was kind of my experience of just seeing them come to us and just having a place where they could set down their things and knew their kids would be, you know, entertained as well.
Danielle, are there any stories that stick with you?
Yeah, I think the stories that stick with me from what we've seen at Heading Home is we've seen families arrive in shorts and flip-flops with nothing, actually, not even a suitcase.
In the middle of winter.
In the middle of winter, in the middle of the night, right? And really what we talk about is they're families that are fleeing for safety purposes. And they're folks that want to be here in the United States to really embrace the American dream, right? To work in this country, to build a family in this country, and to build a life in this country. And that is what we see.
And just let's use the backdrop of where we are right now. I mean, this is not just an election year. This is a presidential election year. So do politics make it even more difficult to navigate?
I think they do. I think because politics a lot of times are about scoring points in a news cycle. And so on an issue that's this complex and intersectional, if you just make someone the other, think about even the name we've given this. The migrant crisis. It's like they're the crisis. I would say they are in crisis, which is why they fled their country and came to us. And we have an affordable housing crisis and an immigration regulation crisis, and that's why this has happened. But they're not the people are not the crisis. So to score points, people will criticize and they'll complain and they'll other.
Do you see this slowing down at all in the next few months, or just continuing at a very steady pace?
I think it's a great question. I think, you know, to the point you made earlier, it really depends on what goes on in other countries, right, in many ways, and on if our government at the federal level, you know, looks at different policy changes, right? In the meantime, I think we expect it to continue because folks are fleeing. You know, for folks who saw the news this week, if anybody saw what went on in Haiti, families are fleeing, right? They're trying to just be safe and have their children be safe. And so I don't know that we expect to see it slow down. And I think one of the great things about our governor and lieutenant governor and team is they have really focused on being public servants in this and not becoming involved in the political nature, but really focusing on who is the Commonwealth, what are our values, and what is the right thing to do for children.
6 months doesn't solve the issue. I'm trying to avoid crisis or problem. 6 months doesn't resolve the issue. But what do you see happening in 6 months, Danielle?
So I think what we've watched is our administration, we've seen an evolution of a solution to a crisis, as best as one can have a crisis and a humanitarian have a solution to a humanitarian crisis. And I think what we'll see is that evolution will continue as policies evolve, as we work through budget season, as different agencies like ours look to come up with solutions in partnership to help house folks, shelter them, et cetera. Because,
David, the numbers are going to continue. They're not going away.
I don't see a reason why the underlying problems or the folks coming to us would cease to exist.
There's
just not a reason.
Thank you both for being here this morning.
Thanks for allowing us.
Our thanks to our guests this morning for a timely and important conversation on the one topic.